Good afternoon. The question sometimes arises as to what is the difference between a lecture, an infinite way lecture, and a class. Insofar as the material is concerned, there is no difference. The work that I give at lectures is the same that I give in classes. The reason you can see, it is all spontaneous, and I have no way of knowing in advance what is going to come through. And the Spirit doesn't know whether there is a lecture group or a class group. The reason there is a lecture is that it gives opportunities to many to come, hear, judge for themselves whether or not there is a response to the message, or give them something to think about. And therefore, it is natural that they receive the full measure of that which comes through spiritually. In a class, the difference is that there is an obligation on the part of the students. The students have agreed to come to a class for the purpose of being instructed, receiving impartations. And this means that something of a dynamic character takes place, something requiring action, not merely the action of the teacher speaking and imparting, not merely the action of the student hearing. Oh, no. The student's obligation is to do with what they have heard, to act upon, to imbibe, to practice, until they have attained the consciousness they are seeking. Why are we students of the message of the infinite way? For only one reason. And if you have any other reason, it isn't a good one. The reason is to experience and to maintain the God experience. Actual, conscious oneness with God. An actual realization and demonstration of the Spirit of God in men. It is one thing to talk about this. It is another thing to hear about it, but it is far different to experience it. In the more than 17 years of the activity of the message of the infinite way, only 5 students have been chosen to be teachers and lecturers for us. You are hearing all 5 this week. And I know that when you have heard them all, you will agree that they have attained God realization. Their lives indicate that they have given up self. No, perhaps they haven't given it up. Self has been taken away from them, and their lives are dedicated to the Spirit, to God. This is our goal. And it is for this reason that only as our students show forth by their lives that they are ready for such an experience, that they can come to it. No student is to become active in the message of the infinite way until they are successful healers, practitioners. We have no one to speak the word of truth who cannot demonstrate it. In other words, those who voice the message of the infinite way must be expected to be called upon to prove it. And for this reason, even after all of these years, we have very, very few practitioners, and may even have less. And even with the start of healing work, this is not the full testimony to the actual realized Christ. There is a step beyond the healing work before a student can undertake teaching work. But both of these steps require the actual experience of God. Not searching for God, not seeking for God, not reading books about God, but the attainment, the actual attainment of God realization, so that the life may be lived in an inner communion with the Spirit. Again, I bring to your attention the practicality of the spiritual life, because the attainment of spiritual realization never permits one to leave society, to leave the world. As the Master instructed his disciples, remain in the world, but not of it. And as he instructed them before the ascension, remain in this city until you are endowed from on high. Do not go out. Do not preach. Do not proselyte. Do nothing. Remain in this city until you are endowed from on high. And we say to our students, study, practice, meditate, but do not leave the city. Do not go out of your home. Do not try to be workers in the world field until you are endowed from on high. Why? Well, there have been people that have gone out into the world and built a personality following, but this has no relationship to spiritual work, because spiritual work must be accompanied by signs following. The practitioner or the teacher of the infinite way must, by his or her presence, bring healing, physical, mental, moral, financial healing, the healing of family problems, the healing of business problems. They must do this. Otherwise, they have not been endowed by the Spirit. The Master gives us the cue when he says in the temple, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, and I am ordained to heal the sick." not to go away to a monastery and hide, not to leave the valley, to go to the mountaintop for inspiration, 3 days or 40 days, but then to come down to the valleys, to the seaside, and heal the sick, and forgive the sinner, show forth abundance to those in lack, bring forth the nature of God in the consciousness of man. So you see that the spiritual life is an active life and a fruitful one. Now, for nearly all of the years of the message of the Infinite Way, I have written every word of its message. Now you see that we are moving into another age of the Infinite Way, and you will notice in our monthly letter that we have been carrying a Bible lesson prepared by Mrs. Stevenson, whom you heard today. You also will find the tape group lessons arranged by Miss Sinkler, whom you will still hear before this week is over, and who is the editor of my writings. And there is also a monthly letter for parents and grandparents prepared by Mrs. Bowden, whom you heard this morning. There is also an intensive study course, a 17-week study course prepared by Miss McClintock, whom you will hear before the week is over. And you will know by these things that the Spirit that has touched them has made them practical, has given them the ability to present a message, the ability to send forth healings. There are 20 large American corporations that have formed another company to prepare and send out courses of instruction, written and by moving pictures, instructions to heads of large corporations, presidents, vice presidents, managers, executives. And this course will go to numberless companies across this continent. And in this course it states recommended reading all of the writings of Joel Goldsmith, showing what the practicality of mysticism when 20 large corporations recommend it for businessmen. A university last year, having a sales manager's clinic of the Chevrolet Automobile Company, recommended our book, The Contemplative Life, for sales managers and salesmen of Chevrolet automobiles. Do you see how and why I stress the practicality of the spiritual life? Because these years have demonstrated that when the Spirit of God touches you, you begin immediately to lose the personal sense of self. In scriptural language, die daily. So that your prayers are no longer prayers for your own benefit or for the benefit of your family. We're taught, in Scripture that to pray for your friends is a waste of time. If you would be a child of God, you must pray for your enemies. This is just a hint that praying for oneself really is unnecessary. As soon as one has been touched by the finger of God, the finger of God lives our lives. It goes before us to prepare the crooked, to straighten out those crooked places and prepare mansions. I, in the midst of you, become bread, meat, wine, water, supply, companionship, home, harmonious human relationships. Therefore, we have no need for prayer, the prayer of seeking anything. And if we pray, the highest form of prayer is, of course, praying for our enemy to awaken to his own identity, to awaken to the spiritual presence that would set them free. But the greatest evidence of the practical nature of the spiritual life is this. The Spirit, which has touched our consciousness, is felt out here, and you witness the Master walking up and down the Holy Lands and people being healed and forgiven and fed, and even a woman who touched the hem of his robe was healed. And so you find that when the Spirit of God is realized, when consciousness has been touched, that your very presence becomes a benediction to those who come within range of your consciousness. It is not that you are interfering in their lives. It is not that you are trying to be a human do-gooder. It is only this, that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Or, in His presence, there is fullness of joy. Therefore, the moment anyone attains the realized presence of God, that presence of God doeth the works. Make no mistake about this. I of my own self can do nothing. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. If I should believe all of a sudden that I have become a master, I have lost the way. If I believe that I have any power to bless you, I have lost my soul. It is only in proportion as I live consciously in the presence of God, in meditation, in inner communion, that Spirit, which cannot be confined to space, will not be locked up in my body. It must permeate the very atmosphere where I am, and it, what the Master called the Father within, it blesses. You do not bless, I do not bless. I merely live as many hours of the day and night as I can in conscious communion within. I do not try to be a good human being. I merely try to live inwardly that the Spirit may have influence and power and not my selfhood. Then this doeth the works. As you hear our students on this platform, you will notice that too, that you are not aware of them as women, but that rather you will be hearing the message. You will more than hear it, you'll feel it. And once in a while you'll have to shake yourself to look up and be sure that you are listening to human women. The goal of our entire work is not that everyone may be a spiritual teacher or minister or healer. God is infinite. And thank God, each one of us is as individual as our fingerprints. We are individualizations of God being. God manifests himself, or the Spirit manifests itself. Life manifests itself as individually in you and me, as it does in the garden, in the park, in the forests. No one tree can take the place of another tree. The rose cannot supplant the orchid. The daisy is no less than the peony. The blade of grass is no less than a redwood tree. Each performs its own function as outlined, planned by the Spirit. Each one of us was originally created in the image and likeness of God to show forth God's glory. God's glory may be shown forth in the spiritual ministry, in art, in literature, in music, in industry. Many people wonder about that, industry. How does God fit into industry? Can you not imagine the blessings that we have witnessed in the world, in my generation and yours, through industry? Airplane industry, automobile industry, utilities. Do you doubt for a moment that the source of this is God? Of course it's God. Not that as industrialists we may not misuse our talents, or as bankers, or as ministers for that matter. But be assured of this: the origin of industry is in the mind of God. No human being ever invented anything. All of the great discoveries have been discoveries, revelations. No man created electricity and the uses of it. They discovered it, and they discovered it within their consciousness where those secrets had been planted. No artist ever created his art. He found his art in his consciousness and drew it forth. A true educator does not teach us anything at all. The true educator draws forth from our consciousness that which God planted there in the beginning. If it weren't there, the educator could not draw it forth. But we do embody infinity. All of the wisdom of God is embodied in my individual consciousness, but all of it. The scriptural promise is, Son, all that I have is thine. Well, fortunately, I do not try to bring forth the wisdom of electronics or engineering or bridge building, because I have realized my particular limitations in those directions. And so I'm satisfied to let the Spirit come through in the particular form it seems to have chosen. And in the same way, it does not follow that each of our students will become a healer or teacher of spiritual wisdom, but it does follow that if they are touched and have the experience of God, that whatever their field is, they will be supreme in. They will be the best. And the reason is, there is no reason for anything less than the best of your particular field, because your own consciousness embodies the infinity of it. You have to be your own educator. You have to draw it forth from within yourself. And the means which we have discovered is through meditation. When I am preparing to be on the platform, and I have my long periods of meditation, close my eyes, open my ears, and realize that the infinite spiritual wisdom of God is embodied within me, and now speak, Lord, and let it flow. And there is no reason then why in infinite truth, the real truth and all the truth, no reason why this should not flow through me. Because I'm but the transparency who has opened himself to let that infinity flow through. So it is. Music, art, literature, theater, be it what it may. As you learn to meditate, you close your eyes and feel this darkness, and then realize that God constitutes my individual consciousness. God manifests himself as the Son. The Father and the Son are one, and all that the Father hath, the Son hath, and the Son is. Therefore, as the Son turning to the Father within, flow. Emmanuel, God with me. The Spirit of God is upon me. And then it must flow in any field in which you are interested, any field to which you are dedicating or giving yourself. And the flow can be of an infinite nature if you will accept infinity. You see, the beginning of wisdom is when you begin to understand the nature of your own being. This is undoubtedly why it says over the Greek temple, "Man, know thyself, and you will find God." Because once you know yourself, you will have access to infinity. This is why the ideal that was expressed in the Magna Carta of England and in the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence, these ideals were expressed in order to show forth the dignity of individual man. The dignity, the equality, the wholeness of individual man. And just as when the Master said to his followers, "Call no man on earth your father, for one is your Father in heaven," he was not indicating that only Hebrews have God for their Father, even though he was addressing Hebrews. He certainly was not limiting that statement of the fatherhood of God to the Hebrew race. He voiced this as a universal truth which had been revealed within him, that God is our Father. Therefore, since this is universal truth, it is the one and same Father that says to every soul on the face of the globe, "Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine." A mistake is often made in believing that man is great in and of himself, that man himself is a superman or super being, whereas the mystics who really knew, the ones who were able to show forth their humility, knew that we are infinite, that we are immortal, that we are individually great, but by reason of our oneness with God, our source. When Paul says, "I can do all things," please remember that he adds, "through Christ, through the Spirit of God in me." When the Master says, "I can of my own self do nothing," he shows forth the same humility, even though he acknowledges the Father through me doeth the works. In other words, mysticism relates to an understanding of our relationship to God. Mysticism does not set up two individuals, 200 or 2,000, as each being great in their own right. It acknowledges no Superman. It acknowledges no superconsciousness, separate and apart from the man who has identified himself with his source, the divine consciousness. When Whitman sings the song of himself, be assured he knew. He was speaking of the man rooted and grounded in God. You know that by the very humility of his life, that he was not setting himself up as something separate and apart from life itself. So it is The world is going through a serious stage today because there is a warfare, a worldwide warfare against individuality, against individual identity, against relationship with God. All of that which sets up men and women in herds or unites them for their common good, all of this is a denial of the spirit of the individuality and the freedom of man. Makes no difference whether it is a communistic society that sets up 200,000 people to govern 200 million people, or a socialistic state that owns everything and parcels it out to its citizens, or the form of government that has temporarily taken us over, that tells us we need not think, we'll be provided for from the cradle to the grave. Just follow me. All of this is a denial of man's individual selfhood. All of this is a denial of man's oneness with God, because in our oneness with God, the manifestation of the presence and power of God through us enables us to serve. And this is our function. Our function is not to get. Our function is not to take from each other. Our function is not to live off of each other or by virtue of each other. The function of the individual man is service. Many people think of the word or the term the master as meaning somebody who had dominion, whereas Christ Jesus showed us that the term master means servant. Servant of the Most High. And every gift that makes one a master makes them a greater servant, not only of the Father, but of the sons of God. The master, watch him as the outstanding example of a God-realized man, having attained individual realization of his identity, and notice that at no time or place did he serve himself. He served the world that came within range of his consciousness. Study the life of Gautama the Buddha, and you will quickly be impressed by the fact that the very moment the grace of God reached him in his experience of the Bodhi tree, in that very moment his life was dedicated to the people of India, serving, healing, feeding. Paul, the same. The Bodhisattva, one of the real greats of the mystical world, who received the full and complete illumination of oneness in India, in 900 or between 900 and 1,000. When transportation was very primitive, traveled all the way from India to China to spread the word of the Chan Buddhism. And he traveled all the way from China to Japan to carry Zen Buddhism. From the moment of his illumination, he was a servant of God and of man. And there is no record that he had any life of his own, except that he ate and drank and slept and probably had some pains once in a while on the way. When any individual has their first God experience, regardless of how minor it may seem to be, you will discover that they live less and less unto themselves and more unto others. Again, they may show this forth in industry. You would be surprised how many men we have in industry today who live with the Bible and by spiritual means, and yet carry out their mechanical or commercial wisdom in industry. You would be surprised if you knew how many medical doctors there are who live by spiritual grace and do a great deal of their healing work by spiritual grace, even while passing out a few medicines to satisfy those who must have some external evidence of God's power. The experience of God, even to the degree of attaining the estate of a mystic, does not divorce one from this world, but it separates them from being of the world. It leaves them in the world. Inventors, artists, musicians, and all. It leaves them in the world, but living a different level of life where attention is not centered on creating or their own good, but rather in being instruments through which the Spirit can function. And this is a most important point to remember. To some, there may come a temptation when the Spirit first touches them to glorify their own egos and to make them think that they have become righteous or spiritual or moral or good or benevolent. This is the danger stage, and many have lost their entire hope of heaven, their entire hope of realization through being given God's grace and then allowing their ego to misinterpret it. From the moment that the Spirit of God or finger of God touches you, give recognition to the fact that whatever manifests itself through you is the grace of God, the activity of God, the presence of God. Be sure, whether your sales increase or your novels get better or your acting gets better or your healing work gets better, remember, this has nothing to do with you except as a transparency. It only means that the grace of God is more firmly upon you and working through you. This is undoubtedly the greatest danger that touches those on the spiritual path. They receive a touch, and before they have had an opportunity to assimilate it, to grow in grace, they run around the world trying to do good with it. This should not be. Be patient. Grow in grace. Do not leave this city until you are endowed from on high, until you know that the Spirit of God is working through you, and the proof of it is the measure of service for which you are called upon. This is the indication. When the message of the infinite way was given to me, there was also given to me the instructions of carrying it to the world. And the first instruction I was given was, never seek a student. Share with the students who are led to you. Never seek a student. And this has been followed out to the extent that not only is there no attempt made to seek a student, but in all of these years I have never gone any place, have never lectured or taught any place except when I was sent for. Only when an invitation came that indicated its seriousness of purpose did I respond. I was instructed not to advertise in the usual sense of advertising, and we never have. We have a notice in the paper calling attention to the study center or calling attention to my class, but this is not advertising because it is always worded in such a way that only those who already know the name Goldsmith or Infinite Way can possibly know what it's about. Therefore, we are not advertising for anyone to come, and we are not advertising that we have any good to offer. So, gradually, we are led to one of the great principles of mysticism, and that is this: my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. You'll find this exemplified in the book, I believe it is Conscious Union with God. In the moment, in my meditation, when I attain the realization of the presence of God, the Spirit of God, or my oneness with God or union with God, in that moment I am set free from all the world and from all human efforts. And the way it worked out practically was that I sat in a small office in California, did not move out of it until 3 people walked in the door and asked for instruction, and continued to sit there until 4 couples came and asked for instruction, and continued to sit there until the next and the next and the next, and so forth, and have discovered in all of these years all that is necessary for the unfoldment of the message of the infinite way, or for my personal life, whatever there is of it, is done without taking conscious thought, is done without planning. Now again, that does not mean that when the conviction is given to me within that I am to make a trip, it doesn't mean that I do not write ahead and ask for hotel reservations or a classroom or lecture room, or that I do not send out notices to our students that I'm coming. All of those practical footsteps follow after I have been given the instruction to go, and then find that the Spirit goes before me to make the crooked places straight. And this you will discover. Whatever your business may be, whatever your art or profession may be, that your contact with the Spirit draws unto you everything necessary for the fulfillment of your work, of your home, of your business, of your finances, of anything and every nature necessary for your life. But you will also discover this, that very quickly most of the good that is unfolding to you through the Spirit of God is being poured out for the benefit of others. You no longer have that sense of laying up treasure where moth nor rust corrupt. You no longer have that sense of, oh, this is mine. Just as the Spirit reveals to you that it is the Spirit of God moving through our teachers, so you will discover that it is the Spirit of God that is providing through you more than for you. We found a beautiful passage recently. The vine consumeth not its own grapes. It would be strange, wouldn't it, if we saw vines eating up their own grapes? No, the grapes come through the vines for you and me, and thereby the vine itself is glorified. It lacks nothing by giving us its grapes. And so with us, that which comes through us is for you, for this world. But we lack nothing by letting it pour. So you will discover, to me it is one of the greatest secrets I have ever learned, and one of the most valuable, that God has never given me anything. Never. Everything that has come to me through the grace of God has not been labeled for me, but through me. In this way, you can behold the universal nature of God. Unless you can come to see that God is a God of all people, all races, all religions, and none. It includes the agnostics and the atheists. They have the same God we have. They're not aware of it, but they have the same God, and they receive their life from the same God. Even though they may not acknowledge it, they're breathing by the grace of God, and they even stand on their feet by the grace of God. If you ever try it, muscles cannot keep you on your feet. If consciousness is absent, you won't stand up. If consciousness is absent, you won't breathe. And so it is that even if we deny the presence of God, still we have the same God. Then, how impossible it would be for God to give me something. Well, as a matter of fact, I doubt that you could love that God that would give me while you are all sitting here. Wouldn't that shock you? And wouldn't you like to desert that God? And rightly so. For there is no God that gives me. There is a God that has given to all his own breath, his own life, his own spirit, his own mind, his own consciousness, his own soul, and his own body. Know ye not that your body is the temple of the living God? God gave you this temple. This is another very practical revelation of mysticism. The non-mystic may, and most often does, desecrate his own body, misuse it and abuse it. The mystic never does. The mystic knows that the body is the temple of God, has been given to him by the grace of God, and he knows that his body is sacred. And he knows that your body is sacred, and the mystic will never desecrate your body. The mystic will never dishonor your body. The mystic alone knows the sacredness of individual identity, individual being, individual sanctity, and even the sanctity of your body and of your purse. The mystic could never be a thief. The mystic could never cheat, defraud. Because the mystic, in the realization of the spiritual nature of individual being, holds you sacredly. You, your being, your body, your purse. You see, prayers for peace on earth are a waste of time. They are time-consuming, and they're purely a waste, because there can be no peace on earth until there is the understanding of the sanctity of the individual being. And then you will no more want to desecrate the citizens of another nation than you would your own, nor would you be a party to it. And therefore, as we all come into that realization, peace comes. You see, there is peace in this room, and there is peace among us and between us. And those who have any understanding of this message, and there are many here who have been with us many years who know, there is a permanent state of peace such as you feel here now. Why? Because of our recognition that I and my Father are one, all that the Father hath is mine, and therefore you are free with yours. I realize the sanctity of my being because of my relationship to God. I realize the sanctity of your being, and so each one of us comes to that realization. And since we want nothing of each other except to share what we have, there is peace. Wars come about for two major reasons: religion and money. These have been the foundations of every war that have ever been fought: religion or money. Well, you see, we could not war on religious grounds because we have accepted the fact that regardless of what your religion may be or may not be, you have the same God or Father as I have, and so I have no quarrel with you on religious grounds. Whether you worship with your shoes on, as we do in the Occident, or with your shoes off, as they do in the Orient, whether you worship with your hats on, as they do in some churches, or your hats off, as they do in other churches, what difference would that make to us? And if you worshiped in no church, what difference would that make to us? I know thee who thou art, the Son of the living God, and the form of your worship matters not. So we could not war on religious grounds. We could never war on financial grounds because we have no obligation to each other. You owe me nothing and I owe you nothing, and whatever of a financial nature takes place between us is a voluntary matter. There is no demand, there is no obligation, therefore we could not war on that scale. And as you ponder this, you will see that this is the solution to national and international wars. When we attain peace in consciousness, we will have peace in the world.